Hey guys, what is up? It is Limited Llama back with another Sorare MLB video. Today I'm going to be talking about how to find the best value players using both FantasyPros and a website called Soraredata.com. So this is part 2 of my series about how to use FantasyPros to maximize your Sorare player value and to find really solid players at a cheaper price. So if you haven't watched part 1, I would recommend going back and watching that. I'll link it in the description. That will give you the idea of why you want to use FantasyPros, and also it'll walk you through how to set it up and making an account and all of that. So go watch that. If you haven't, I'm assuming that you've already watched it. So the first thing that I'm going to do over at FantasyPros, you're going to go to MLB and then click My Playbook, and this will bring you to your team and your league. So again, we already input all of the data around what scores count for what based on the Sorare scoring system. So right now, FantasyPros is basing all of the rankings inside of this league based on how Sorare ranks players. So what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to go over to waiver and then click top available. And what this is saying is it's saying what are the top players that I don't own, basically. And the way it ranks those players is based on their fantasy points for the rest of the season. And this fantasy points is the amount of Sorare points that they're expected to get based on the point values that we already input and based on how they're expected to do for the rest of the year. So once you're in here, the nice thing is that you can filter by hitters, by pitchers, or by a specific position. So for example, if you wanted to see who are the best starting pitchers for the rest of the year, you can go in here, see Shohei Ohtani, Corbin Burns, Sandy Alcantara, Aaron Nola, right? All of these players have a very high fantasy points, and that's because of the way that Sorare scores players. So if, for example, if a strikeout was worth 100 points, then players who have a lot of strikeouts would be worth more. But because of the balance of Sorare's points, these players are worth the most. And that's really the nuance that FantasyPros gives you, is it allows you to see which players are the best given the combination of scores that Sorare uses. So once you figure out like what your needs are, or if you're just signing up, right, you're going to need every single position. So you're going to need a couple pitchers, starting pitcher, relief pitcher. You're going to need a corner infielder, a middle infielder, and an outfielder, and then a flex player and another pitcher or another batter. So the first thing that I would do is go over into all positions, and then we're just going to look at the top hitters. And I already know all of these players are going to cost you like somewhere around $100, probably, give or take, maybe a little bit less for some of these. So let's go over to hitters here. So we're just focusing on hitters, and we can see we want this to be set to the rest of the season, so we're ranking them based on how they're going to do for the rest of the season. And now we can scroll down, and you'll start to find players who maybe you didn't expect to see up here that maybe will cost a little bit less, like maybe Matt Olson, for example. Let's look. And now the website that I'm moving over to, this website is called Soraredata.com. So I'll put this in the description. You can sign up for this website for free. I just found out about it. And you can look up players in this website, and it'll tell you how much they've cost over time, and it'll give you like their auction prices and their current market price. So previously I'd just been going on Sorare and looking at the market, but that's not always the most accurate. So Soraredata.com gives you historical data about a specific player. So we're looking at Matt Olson here. So we're going to just type in Matt Olson. And Sorare data is really meant for the football, the soccer side of things, but they also have the MLB players. However, they don't really have like any icons, and they're missing some of the data. But the main things that we're looking for are still here, right? So the main things we're looking for is their price average based on the past couple days, and they're always listed in Ethereum, which I understand if you're in the crypto world, you kind of know how to convert this over to dollars, but I don't. Thankfully, they have the 3-day average converted into dollars for you. So the 3-day average is $30 for Matt Olson. So still pretty pricey. So let's keep on moving and see if we can find somebody who has some good value. Like, let's look at a Rhys Haskins, for example. Rhys Haskins, sorry, not Hopkins. So still $22. So we're going to probably have to keep moving. You can even see here, this is what's really interesting about this website, is that Rhys Haskins has actually gotten quite a bit pricier. He started off for most of August. He was around 0.005, which is I think less than $10. But more recently, he's really spiked quite a bit. So I guess the interest in Rhys Haskins has increased quite a bit. So not a super value play. But you can see, you can keep scrolling through here, looking for players who maybe you wouldn't expect, and then going and looking at SorareData.com and seeing, okay, how much are they going to cost me? Is this going to be worthwhile to add to my team? Let's see. I'm trying to find a player that might be a little bit cheaper, maybe like a CJ Crone. See how much he's going for. Yeah, so $7.34, right? Not super cheap, right? Not like a $2 player, but also pretty reasonable, less than $10 for a CJ Crone. And he seems like he's consistently been about that cheap. So you can see CJ Crone, he's expected to give you 309 points for the rest of the season, which isn't not bad. You compare that to, 500 for some of the best players, but still $7 for CJ Crone, not too bad. And then you can also look and see how he ranks in the rest of the statistics. So, for example, runs, home runs, RBIs. So CJ Crone 309, 149 at bats. Then he has 21 runs, all of those things. So if you want to focus on a specific stat, you can also do that. You can rank them by, how many home runs they have expected, RBIs, but I would definitely recommend ranking by fantasy points because that's what SoRare is going on. So again, if you have a specific need that you need, for example, you need an outfielder really badly, which I kind of do, you click outfielder, and then this would filter it by outfielders. And you can scroll it through here and see Tommy Edman. Let's see how much he's going for. Tommy Edman. I'm going to click on him, right, $8.39. You can see he's been around that price the entire time, so you can pick him up. He, based on this website, is the 15th best outfielder that you can get in SoRare. And, picking him up for $8 seems like a pretty solid deal if he's the 15th best, right? He's ranking around Byron Buxton, Christian Yelich, who are all probably going for significantly more. So that's how I personally use Fantasy Pros to find players, is I look for players who are undervalued in SoRare, because a lot of the value, a lot of the pricing around a player comes down to their popularity, how much people know, and not necessarily like how many fantasy points are expected for the rest of the season for that player. And that's what Fantasy Pros lets you do. Another thing that you can do is you can sort it by starting pitcher, relief pitcher. So for example, the one thing that's really interesting about SoRare is how high they rate closing. So a save is worth 10 points, whereas a win is only worth 5, a hold is only worth 5. So getting really solid closers is super important. And you can see here, let's see, saves. You can see two of the top players are really high on saves, which is why they're going to be worth so many points. It looks like Martin Perez just has a lot of strikeouts, which evidently is also worthwhile, and he has a lot of innings pitched for the rest of the year. So you can see there's a lot of balancing act going on here because, Camilo Doval, Emmanuel Clase, they're both closers, so they're going to not pitch that many innings, but they're going to get a lot of saves expected. Whereas Martin Perez, probably a late innings guy, he's going to eat up some innings and have a lot of strikeouts, and that'll about balance out according to Fantasy Pros. But this isn't really something that you would expect if you just came in here. And I would honestly, if I was expecting relievers, I would just pick up the best closers because saves are worth so much. But this is kind of the advantage of using Fantasy Pros. Again, you can go over to all positions. You can actually also just look up players. I think you can do that. Let me see how exactly. All right, I am back. Sorry, I had to look up how you actually search players, and I don't think there's a dedicated search function. I think what you just have to do is go to their position and then just Control F them. So, for example, if we want somebody like Andres Jimenez, you would just go into shortstop and then Control F or Command F for that player, and you can find them and then scroll over and see how many fantasy points they have expected for the rest of the year. Normally, when you actually have a fantasy league loaded in, you can use the waiver assistant for this, but that doesn't work because we haven't actually linked up to an actual league. So that's how you go ahead and you search players, and then again you can go over and look at like Andres Jimenez over on Soraredata.com, and you can see how much he's been going for. And the nice thing that I really like about Soraredata.com is that you can see their prices over time. You can see maybe they're a little overpriced right now, or maybe they're a good deal right now. And I really wish that I had done this when I bought cards, right in here, all of these cards. I just kind of was basing it off of their expected statistics on Baseball Savant, but I didn't really have a good quantitative way to weigh which players were the best, which ones aren't the best. And a lot of these players just weren't really solid pickups. Like, let's look at like a Jason Adam. Let's see what he ranks. Jason Adam. Yeah, he's literally almost dead last, but I thought he was a great pickup. So that's the nice thing about using Fantasy Pros, is that it gives you the data in order to pick up players that Andres Munoz, also 57th, right? Both of these players are in like the bottom third of all relievers, and yet I decided that they would be great people to pick up. So having the knowledge of Fantasy Pros is going to give you a huge advantage heading into the games, especially if you use it to kind of start off your account. If you like throw in $30 or $60 and you go through Fantasy Pros and you just like find the best players for $5, for $7, you can really use that to come up with a really competent team that's going to win you a lot of points and a lot of competitions moving forward. So that is all I have in this video. In the next video, I'm going to walk through how to set up importing your team into Fantasy Pros, and then how to use Fantasy Pros to actually decide which players to play in a specific competition. So be on the lookout for that. I'll be uploading that tomorrow, and hopefully that'll be helpful because I really have a hard time deciding which players to play in my competitions. If you watched my video two days ago, I spent a lot of time deciding between two pitchers, but Fantasy Pros makes that way easier. So be on the lookout for that. If you haven't, go ahead and subscribe down below, and I'll link both Soraredata and Fantasy Pros so that you can check them out if you're interested. So as always, thanks for watching. I'll catch you guys in the next one.